Good morning, Vikings fans. This is Morning Joe's. I'm your host, Joe Johnson, owner of PurplePTSD.com, VikingsTerritory.com, and PurpleTerritoryRadio.crap. Here with...
Wow.
Yeah, it's going to be a dark show by my PG language, if you couldn't already tell. I'm here with Joel Oberle, who I have a feeling is a little less apocalyptic than I am after Sunday's debacle.
Yeah, maybe.
Joe's the editor of those things, and this is a professional podcast with a professional intro. Yeah, I don't think, you and I have really talked about our feelings on Sunday's game.
Yeah.
I did an immediate post-game show with Kirby, which is something that I've tried to stay away from because I have a tendency to let my emotions get the better of me. And
overreact, perhaps?
A little bit, but so I felt really stupid on Monday, and almost like waking up at 3 in the morning, like, what did I do? God, they lost by 3 points. What are you doing? And then seeing Zimmer's quote of it's not the end of the world, I almost felt like he was saying that directly to me. And then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, you know what? That game sucked, and it is very disconcerting for a multitude of reasons. So then I ended up writing like a 2,000-word essay about, I think that the title was, yeah, they only lost by 3 points, and it was like an initiation into the Doom and Gloom Society, which I am a charter member, the Purple Doom and Gloom Society. And
Joe,
I'm not happy.
I was recently in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and they have all these listings of places where they lost by 3 points, but they lost by 1 point, but they lost by 2 points, but no, it means nothing. They lost.
Yeah. It's not the fact that it's just the how of it. I even beyond anything on the field, I just really think it was another example of this coaching staff outthinking themselves. The Stefanski kind of running this weird game plan that didn't work, and then they couldn't escape from it for whatever reason. Elflein had a horrible game, of course. Cousins didn't play great. They lost Thielen, so on and so forth. But I just don't see a lot of good decisions on a consistent basis from this coaching staff.
I don't understand all that. I mean, I know a lot of people are saying that about the game plan didn't work. They're out thinking themselves. I don't know that. I think you have to go into every game trying to figure out what the defense is going to do to you, trying to figure out what their offense is going to do. And if you're on offense, you try to you figure out what you think they're going to do, and you might try to do something different to throw them some wrinkles. If it works, they're brilliant. If it doesn't work, then we're overthinking. Yeah. So which is it? I'm not saying this about you, about what you just said. I've just heard that, ever since Sunday.
My take on it is that if you can't impose your running game against the 30th worst or best, that's the crux of the issue, is that they were running.
Yes, but everybody and their brother's dog knew that they were going to come out. They should come out running one of the best running games in the league against one of the worst running defenses. They're going to run the ball. Well, you come out. I guess Zimmer did say, we tried to get too cute. I don't know. I mean, did you? Well, then that's a problem. All right, I'll agree with you. But you got to keep the defense off guard. And I think that's the primary thing. I think that's the most important key to success, is to not to trick the other team, but to keep them so they don't know what's coming. And the problem is Kirk Cousins. You said he didn't play well. Totally agree. He kind of submarined this team in the early going with that first 2 series. He couldn't hit the broadside of a barn.
Yeah. And short passes were bad. Long passes were bad.
Maybe it was wind, but come on, Kirk. When he started firing the ball, and those 3 touchdown passes were bullets. He was assertive. He was strong. He was decisive. He was phenomenal. But when he tried to throw a touch pass out to the flat or to the side or even across the middle, he was behind and overthrowing, and it's like, what's the deal here. But
well, going back to what you just said, what scares me about this is there's been a lot of articles about the Chiefs game exposing the Vikings offense, and I know that's something that is really hyperbolic and something that I can tell you don't agree with, but what scares me is what you said, which was, you have to keep the defenses on their toes, do something they don't expect. So they did something different. It clearly didn't work. So basically that just signals to me that maybe that they're a one-dimensional team in how they can run the ball, and if other teams stack the box like the Chiefs did, and Elflein has a bad game like he's been having, this team ends up in a lot of third and long situations which they can't consistently do anything about. So it's scary on a larger level for that reason to me. Not necessarily, I get not wanting to just run the exact same offense week to week.
Yeah.
Although I do think that there is some credence in saying that this Vikings team has enough talent at every position to impose its will on lesser opponents.
I'm not going to disagree with that.
How we felt the last 4 weeks, and I was just disappointed that they got, again, too cute against a really bad rushing team, and that didn't work, so they couldn't set up the play action, and it all kind of fell apart from there.
Well, if that's the case, if they're that one-dimensional, and I will say I think they were one-dimensional because they were missing an awful important cog, and I think we certainly saw the value to this team is of Adam Thielen. Without him in there, who can run great routes, who Kirk Cousins has a lot of confidence in and knows where he's going to be. He's out of the game, and suddenly, that takes away one of their dimensions, and they can sell out for the run, and then they can. I mean, even Adrian Peterson would always, struggle against a stack box for the most part. So if you can do that, and then you take away their strongest dimension, then that is going to hurt you. But over and above that, how come there's like 4 targets to Stephon Diggs and one catch for what's that about? So,
I don't know. The lack of a deep ball was disconcerting. I really felt like they moved away from a lot of what Cousins was building on and what he felt comfortable doing. Like, I didn't see a lot of them doing moving the pocket, doing rollouts, doing bootlegs, that sort of thing, especially in the first half where, it's amazing to look at the Redskins game, which was not a light the world on fire game by Cousins, but I think he had 87% completion, and in the first half of the last game, he was under 50%, so he basically was half the completion percentage that he had the week before. And I hope to God that's not, and football doesn't work that way, but it's not just on him. Like, he just had a bad game and all of a sudden regressed completely, which is...
I think that's part of it.
Yes, I do think, especially because they weren't throwing the ball deep. So,
yeah. Well, he
what
on
is
some
going
of those
on?
touch passes, he had plenty of time, and he didn't have anybody on him. The first one to Cook was behind him, was terrible. He threw someone behind. He sailed a couple more. It's like, just throw the ball to the player. He's wide open.
Did you hear any indicate? I heard him talk about it, but he said it in a really nonchalant way. Like, he was bemoaning the third and longs and saying we had a lot of great plays dialed up for third and shorts that we didn't get to use. A lot of scripted stuff.
Why'd that happen?
And I know he's just like, a lot of the short passes weren't working. Overthrew him a lot, especially then he didn't really give a reason as to why, which he doesn't have to, but I felt like he maybe either was feeling pressure or there was some pressure. He seems to struggle when he has to get the ball over the top of a defender and then back down to a receiver. But yeah, to go from damn near 90% completions to 45% in a 1 week span is scary. But I also don't think they were running a lot of the same plays that he's benefited from over that 4-game span where he went from an MVP candidate to being now whatever the antithesis of an MVP would be. It's the other, we were joking around about the show that we're going to be doing Sunday and every game after that, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but Joe and I and Kirby will be doing live game commentary on a new sports app called Hot Mic. Well, you're going to be the first and only Vikings coverage. It's going to be video and audio. that you can sync up regardless of, if you're watching it on regular TV or Hulu or Netflix, or not Netflix, but you get cable. And the name of that show the first one that I thought of was The Other Shoe, because a lot of articles by me and a lot of what we've talked about is waiting for the other shoe to drop and Cousins to fall back to earth, this Vikings offense to fall back to earth with him. And I felt that way on Sunday. Like, that's what happened. It just was
the other shoe dropped. Yeah. Well,
a lot of.
But what about the defense too, though?
Stuff. Mm-hmm.
The defense did not play well. Once again, another backup quarterback who had another week under his belt, and who had performed well against Green Bay. So you can't take that away from him. But imagine this game might not even have been close if Patrick Mahomes is healthy and plays. I mean,
and they were missing 40% of their offensive line.
I know it. It's terrible.
I get that they're chipping and they're bringing in help from their tight ends and what have you, but you have to be able to overcome that. Like, I just think, I'm not trying to say that the players themselves played well in spite of a bad game plan, but I just feel like Zimmer sometimes is just way too conservative for his own good. I mean, I've seen the Vikings for years try to do what the Chiefs did against us, bring in tight ends for help or have a running back chip. It doesn't seem to work for us, but for whatever reason, it works for other teams, and they always make game-winning kicks against us too. I can't remember a time when that didn't happen for the Vikings. So it's just really frustrating on all levels, but it starts, I guess, with the coaches too. And we'll get into the defense a little bit more, but I wanted your opinion on something you touched on, which was the Thielen re-injury, and I saw that on Twitter that they had said that he didn't significantly re-injure, or his hamstring is no more injured than it was before the game.
That's what Zimmer said this morning at his press conference.
But he's not playing this against the Cowboys, right? So that can't be true. Yes. Otherwise, unless they're looking back and saying we shouldn't have played him against Kansas City.
No, they didn't play him against Washington. So if it's the same injury, he's going to miss some games. It's a hamstring, and I mean, I've covered this team in the NFL for many years, and these things do not heal overnight. Hamstrings take a while to repair and to get back. So I would have bet my bottom dollar he wasn't playing this week, and I don't think he'll play next week. I think they will rest him through till the bye. They will play him. They won't play him this week. They'll rest him against Denver, and then he'll have the bye, and he'll come back and for the stretch run in December. I think that's the plan. That they should have held him out longer. But Thielen, he was crabbing about getting back on the field when he first injured it, and I'm sure he spent the whole week saying, "I'm fine, I'm fine." Zimmer told reporters that the MRI tells you what's going on with it, and the player tells you what's going on. So he goes, Eric Sugarman is one of the best in the business, so he knows. But those are your two keys. You look at what the film shows, and you look at what the player says. And if you got Thielen, who wants to play constantly, he's a gamer. He wants to be out in the field. I mean, you can just see how he storms up and down the sidelines. You might not get the totally accurate thing. He's not gonna say, well, maybe I should sit out. No, he's going to lean towards get me out on the field. And I think Zimmer said it wasn't a mistake. It looks like one now.
Yeah.
Hopefully it isn't injured worse. And if that's the case, let him rest, get him back. I mean, that's what they're doing with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
They threatened all week, oh, yeah, he might come back. But they weren't going to bring him back. They had a 2-game lead in the division. They want him for the stretch run in December when you get healthy for the playoffs and the end of the regular season and the playoffs, and I think you got to do that with Thielen. He's too vital to this.
Clearly,
offense.
I mean, I think they did okay without him in the Lions game. I do think that in the Washington game, there was just a lot of that. There could have been a lot more points on the board if not for the holding penalties. I mean, Cousins was like missed 3 throws out of 25 or something. But yeah, you really felt like they missed him on Sunday, and I don't know what the difference was. I mean, I do think that again it stems from a lack of third and short distances. They ended up having to do a lot of things that they aren't high
Maybe
percentage
there's trust.
throws.
He has more trust with Thielen than he does with BC Johnson at this point because, Johnson's a rookie and hasn't played that much with him. And I think Kirk and Adam Thielen have built up a rapport and a chemistry that's...
Certainly. And if you throw it his way, he's got such a high catch radius, and he's also really good at being a defender if he needs to be, that isn't going to end up being the case. But it doesn't bode well for the game in Dallas this weekend. Although perhaps a security blanket is Josh Doctson is back, thankfully. Or I guess it'll be his debut as a Viking, but he's got some familiarity with Cousins having played in Washington alongside him. They've had some deep balls to one another now. Dotson's whole thing is that he's a deep ball guy only, so he's not going to be a lot of help on short and intermediate routes, I don't think.
Joe, and wasn't he a hamstring injury?
Yeah.
And look how long it's taken him. They put him on IR with his.
Yeah, and that's scary.
Absolutely. I mean, you've got to let them heal. And what's his face? Diggs has lingered with one either last year or the year before, where he was out for a number of weeks, and they just take time. So I think they got a bad information from their player, and he got out there quicker than he should have. And hopefully they make the right decision with him now because you want him for December.
They're gonna put him on ice for a while.
I think so.
I do want to talk about Doctson a little bit, but I also want to shout out Treadwell for having his best game as a pro, especially on that first. Excuse me, hiccups. The first catch that he had, because Treadwell of old would have dropped that ball. He got hit a split second after. His problem usually was that he would take his eyes off the ball to look at who was coming before it got there. Then he would end up not making the catch. So I mean, it was great to see him have a decent game. It's never, I guess, a good sign to see him out there either. Not to rag on the guy, but something weird is going on if Treadwell's your leading, and he led the team in receiving yards, which is also not a good sign, but good for him because I've dumped on him a lot. So I wanted to.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice to see him catch some balls, and actually, maybe confidence is a wonderful thing. They knew they needed him. He knew they needed him. I mean, Zimmer cut him, and he reportedly told him, he says, "Here's the things you need to work on to get back out here." And he probably said to him, stuff happens during the year. Stay in shape. We may call you again, and they did. And to his credit, he came through. He's never going to be someone that they depend on for, day to game to game, week to week service. But if he can fill in like that and be a spot, player that can get you some first downs, which he did, more power to him, and maybe he can make a career out of it. At least not here, somewhere else. But
I was a little surprised he didn't get picked up elsewhere, primarily in New York with Shermer.
That will probably happen next time, though. I mean, if they don't sign him at the end of the year in some form or fashion, he will. He has more and better tape to shop around. So because he's not worthless, but maybe he's got his head screwed on straight and he's doing the right things, and hopefully it only continues to get better for him. But Doctson is. It should be interesting to have him. I was kind of excited to see what he's got. I don't have any idea. I don't know enough about him. I know he was always injured when he was with Washington. So, but the reports are that he and Cousins have some chemistry, and we'll see what goes with that. But before we
saw that
leave,
almost instantaneously with Eldrick Robinson last year. I think he had a touchdown in his first game, a la what was that guy's name? Favre to Greg Williams? Greg Lewis. Damn it! I just watched that like a week ago too. I'm such a loser.
Before we leave Cousins, I don't know if you had it on the agenda, but my goodness, the slide, the third down and 4 slide that came up short of the marker.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, Kirk. That stuff happens, and if you're a team that's winning all the time and you're still got things going, you can say, no big deal. But in a game like this against a very good opponent on the road, and he made the right decision. He sprinted out. He had it, and someone had told me it's like the first time he has ever slid as opposed to diving. The season. So my God, dude,
they must have told him to do that, or they've been ragging on him for a while because he has taken some chances physically. Usually when he's frustrated. But yeah, that was not a good look. There was just a lot of bad. That game just left such a bad taste in my mouth for a multitude of reasons. But you just thought. I don't know. Again, it just scares me that maybe that's the formula to beating the Vikings, and I don't really think that Zimmer's been the best at overcoming.
That? Stacking the box?
Either stacking the box, and then, yeah, basically enforcing them into third and longs that they can't overcome, or doing something exotic that makes the coaches panic, and then they go away from what has given them the success that they have.
If you have Adam Thielen out there, though, Joe, I mean, maybe they knew that coming in that he wasn't going to be that effective because it's a hamstring, and so maybe they say, okay, we'll stack the box and make them try to beat us with their hobbled receiver, and if he's not in there, because when Adam's in there, they're going to make those a few more of those third and longs.
Yeah.
He's going to make that play.
From what I've read, the problem was that they kept running between the tackles against the stacked box, almost like a DiFilippo-y. Ironic sort of way, and then when they did kick it outside, they would run it to the weak side, to Elfline's side, where things would collapse more often than not. They weren't doing a lot of like the zone stretch plays to the right that have been really successful, and they did that, I'm sure, because they thought that the Chiefs had planned for it. I don't think it was the greatest game by the line in general. I think that had a big part of it. I think Elfline did have a really bad game. I don't know what that's all about. I'm a little surprised, or a lot surprised, because I really held on to that quote of his from from his rookie year, where he said he was a lot more comfortable playing guard than center. And so the question is, what do they do there? Do they he seems to be getting worse game by game. So do they perhaps put in Dakota Dozier, who didn't look good, in all honesty, against the Bears, but that was the Bears. But they also didn't have Hicks at the time, or I don't know how far along Drew Samia is, but he's at the bottom of the depth chart. He's a beast physically, but I think he's kind of a bit. I'm surprised by the label of him being a project, considering he played on like the best line in the country at Oklahoma. I think they won that, whatever the name of that award is, for the best offensive line. So
Outland Award? What was that linebacker? Outland or something like that. No, that's not for line. Anyway, he's obviously not ready. He hasn't maybe made the adjustment to the pro game, because you've got to be a thinking man out there. You can't be just a beast and a road grader. You've got to know. I mean, you've got
especially
the defense. You got to read
with what they're doing.
Exactly. So when he's ready to go, I'm sure they'll get him in there. But I can't believe Elfline is fallen off the way he has. Apparently, Josh Klein, who we thought might, everybody was just kind of lukewarm about his signing. He's having a pretty decent year over there. So
I guess they could put in what's his face from the Giants, the guy,
Brett Jones.
Brett Jones, yeah, if they needed to, because I think a lot of it stemmed from that. It's hard to say. I mean, there were people putting GIFs or specific video plays of Elfline on Vikings Twitter that were like, he was getting blown off his spot like
But now
crazy.
That's on more often on pass protection than run, though, isn't it? Because I thought his numbers were pretty decent in run blocking. It's just where at pass protection he has really struggled, and I think that's why, since they're a running team, they're gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. I believe that's just my speculation. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I don't know. It freaks me out a little bit. I was really sold on that being like the best move ever. The Bradbury upgrading two positions with one pick, and
but Bradbury's a rookie too, and he had a couple big penalties, I think, this weekend that hurt him.
Yeah, he got beat a couple times as well. I just want them to be on the right trajectory, and I don't really see that happening. But yeah, it was just not the end of the world, though. According to Zimmer, he seems to be.
He's right. He's right. They got to be playing their best ball in December. Just get healthy and play well in December and January, and there you go.
Okay,
come on, man.
The crux of my my doom and gloom article was essentially there's a 3-pronged.
Well, just which one, Joe? Because you write about eight of them per year. But anyway, go ahead.
I think I posted it on Vikings territory, and the people can still see it there. Essentially, the crux of it is there's 3 things that can determine when the Vikings play bad. or when the season goes awry, and it's the coaches outthinking themselves, a la the 2017 NFC Championship game when Zimmer attempted to create this perfect defense that confused the ever-loving shit out of people like Harrison Smith. And then to start the season last year, he overcomplicated things. And then once things simplified, the team seemed to play a lot better. You have Cousins, who can look like an MVP, but then all of a sudden throw for 45% completions on passes that are all under 5 yards somehow. And then you have the defense that's just not had the type of intensity that perhaps we have grown accustomed to.
Maybe they're getting old.
Yeah, I know. I was writing about Rhodes like he's been here forever, and then he's only 29 years old. But he's got a lot of city miles on him.
Yeah, he's 38 in body years. I don't know.
In football years, he's 100. I mean, he's really been struggling. I don't think maybe Zimmer was right this preseason that, they've been together for a really long time. They're really complacent. They don't have that fire. I don't know. It could be any maybe they aren't really buying into Zimmer, into what Zimmer's selling. It's all speculation, but they're just statistically they look good, but I just don't see the eye test of them being really gutsy. At least on
only
every
giving
play.
Up 17.6 points per game. So I mean that's not terrible. I mean,
but they are
Cowboys
playing very good teams.
That's right. That's exactly right. The Cowboys are giving up 17.8, and they've been playing dregs. I mean, they've played the Giants twice, Miami, and another bottom dweller. So it's like, and Washington. So that's it. Does depend on how you play. That's why I think the Vikings could possibly beat the Giants this week, or
Cowboys?
The Cowboys. Yes, because. Although the Vikings competition has not been all that much stiffer, it's been more so than that, and as you'll see in my game preview. But it should be a good game. We aren't there yet talking about it, but I think I don't know. They're not playing like we've seen them in the past, and maybe you don't. Maybe it's ironic because they're actually pretty healthy. Usually by this. They'd be piecing stuff together at mid-season, and to try to keep at that level. But, maybe they're coasting till, December when they have to turn it up. Are they that good? I don't know. I agree with you. I'm not pleased with, in totality, how they've been playing. Their numbers are good, but you got to win ball games, and they've lost 2 that they should have won. The Giants or the Bears game, they were not in it for whatever reason. They're out to lunch on that one. But
against backups too.
Yeah, that's the other 2 games they should have won.
I put that in my doom and gloom article. If you would have told us before the season that the Vikings would be facing, and not knowing what we know about how Trubisky's playing now, of course, but before the season, Trubisky would be out for the Bears game in Chicago. Chase Daniel would be replacing him, and that Patrick Mahomes wouldn't be playing, we would have thought, oh my God, we're going to steal those games. Because those were 2 that were circled as losses on my prediction anyway. And so it's just really disappointing. Another angle of that, because it makes you feel like they're not taking advantage of really big opportunities. The Packers lost, all of the NFC North lost on Sunday. The Vikings would have pulled in to a tie with the Packers. They would lose the tiebreaker, but they'd both be 7-2, which would have been huge. Now they're, essentially, 2 games back and 3 games back with the tiebreaker because they lost to the Chiefs. The Packers beat the Chiefs. Maybe they'll make one up when they play Los Angeles. But I don't know. It's just there was a huge opportunity that way with the NFC North. I know Rodgers kind of called his team out a little bit. I don't know if you heard anything about that, Joe, but
Aaron Rodgers called his team out?
Yeah, he basically said that, and they have a lot of youth on that team, so I understand why, but he said that the team needed to essentially look at and analyze the last 48 hours that they spent in Los Angeles and figure out, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but if they want to be a professional team or not.
Oh my.
Basically saying, I think that either the guys went out drinking or stayed up too late, or they were just clowning around and going to see all the sights in Los Angeles and so on and so forth, but they weren't focused on football, and that's why they only put up 11 points. So He was not happy. He attempted to dial the comments back, though, and saying, like, well, I didn't, but it was almost like a Thielen thing where he spoke earnestly after the game, and then he realized he gave too much red meat to the reporter, so he tried to take that back. But, man, what a great week it would have been had the Vikings won that game, and the Packers lost in spectacular fashion. I mean, again, but at the end of the day, it was a 3-point game. Things could have been different had Bailey made that extra point. Then they would have had to go for it on 4th down instead of kicking the field goal to tie the game. Completely different set of circumstances, but it's a game that they should have won, some would say handily.
Maybe the Packers, who've had all their games so far at home, can only think about football on Lambeau Field. Once time they get outside the confines, they like to look at the bright lights. So you better not play Aaron Jones this week against me in fantasy football, because he's not going to do very well.
Well, I'm playing him and Juan Williams, or whatever that guy's name is, Jamal Williams.
Damian Williams, isn't it?
Is it? I thought it was a J.
Who knows? I think it.
If I didn't have Sprint, I would look. Yeah. That's really all that I can say.
Nice.
How did you? I mean,
radio.
I know Tyreek Hill is little and fast, and I get that they had Waynes on him for that reason. He did get beat. I know Kirby was really trying to talk people off the ledge by saying he's a huge playmaker. Of course, he's going to make plays, but it seemed like he out-physicaled. He was more physical than the Vikings defense was, and he's not the biggest guy in the world. He's got great body control, body positioning, but he was putting himself in the position to make these catches and to really keep, especially Waynes, kind of out of the play. Yeah. You know what I mean? It just seemed like he was beating him physically, and Waynes isn't the most physically dominant guy, but it's just another angle
he's the
of
same size as Tariq. He shouldn't have been out physical like that. And when they had Mackenzie Alexander on Travis Kelce, it was such a mismatch.
Kirby, it broke his brain after the game as to how that happened.
It's back to Tariq Hill. You got to say this though. Well, you make a good point that he got out physical and got beat several times, and the speed of Hill is otherworldly. Him and the rest of the team are making these incredible catches. That touchdown catch was an incredible grab. It was outstretched, falling into the end zone, and Diggs had a shot at the same thing but couldn't haul it in. There's a difference in the game right there. Sammy Watkins made a one-handed grab.
That 91-yard touchdown run was astounding. Longest in team history.
And the longest one that Zimmer said he thinks his defense has ever given up. So
I am really just a really quick amendment to that. I am really sick of watching NFL Network and them showing like top 10 craziest last-second losses or wins.
Because
and the Vikings are on there like 6 times.
They are.
And now, yet again, a record was broken against the Vikings. I don't know what happened on that play. I don't know why the front 7 apparently got sucked in. Or more so the front 9, because it really... it's a bad sign when it's the only 2 people that have a chance are the safeties on that play. I don't know where everyone else went. There's a huge hole. It's just, and I don't think what's his face that scored that touchdown, Williams, is particularly good or anything. It's just that was a really perfect play call for them against the Vikings because it worked.
And they executed it. You said their offensive line had 3 starters missing. Well, they blocked
two of them. Yeah,
they blocked it up pretty well and opened a hole, and away he went. It might have been the wrong play call because there was nobody left in the middle for him once he came up there, and they dialed up the right play. Sometimes that happens, but you've got to be able to overcome that. And to his credit, I've been on Kirk a little bit. He's come back and he threw 3 touchdown passes and looked good doing it. But you can't keep giving teams like the Packers and the Chiefs can't spot them leads, out of mistakes, and then expect to come back at the end of the game and win. And
then you'd have like Odenabo.
No, just wait. In the fourth quarter, you better be able to get a first down. My goodness. Oh,
yeah.
That was such a terrible ending for this team. 2 and outs to end the game, and they go down and kick 2 field goals. My goodness, there's your ball game right there.
I texted Kirby before that saying like this could be a really career-defining moment for Cousins in Minnesota. Like, please God, let them just make it down for a field goal. And
it's not on him either. I mean,
it isn't. But it would have been, to come off of those 3 or 4 games where he's played so well. But a lot of people saying he's not this, he's not that, he's not clutch, he doesn't win games. I know he did win a lot of close games in Washington. I think he led like 11.
You like that, don't you? Yeah, you'd like it, baby. Anyway, go ahead.
It was extremely frustrating. And then you have like Odenabo busting up the middle for a huge loss.
Someone calls a timeout. Oh God.
Yep. And then all of a sudden, somehow Mackenzie Alexander is on arguably the best tight end in the NFL, and the rest is history. I knew before they even kicked that field goal that
it was good.
Are you a fan of icing kickers? I know people were bitching about that, but I just think people were mad in general. I don't know.
No, he was on a roll.
If how that matters, but
what I'm mad about is not playing Kansas City kicker and Tyreek Hill in this game because I don't play anybody against Vikings and took a loss because
principled, of it. Man. I have like a ton of Packers on my team. Do you lend any credence to the Vikings being bad in prime time? Apparently 4 of their last 7 games are in prime time, and some people are saying whoops.
Yeah, after a while, I poo-pooed that for years, and I've heard it all season long about Kirk and all this, and I keep saying, those games don't have anything to do with this, but, God dang it, if Kirk Cousins can't win games in prime time and on the road and in front of a national audience and what have you, and blah blah.
What's the point of any of this?
But no, it's you have to at some point you have to say what's wrong with this guy. What's the problem? I mean, win one of these games because there is a common denominator there. And I'm starting to buy into it. I don't want to because I think it's happy HS, but I don't want to. Say that is true, but it certainly started to be. As I put in my preview for this game, I said, "Thank goodness this game is not out on grass, because it's on the road. It's a good team. It's prime time. 0 for 3 there. The fourth one is if it's on grass, the Vikings can't win that. So I don't know. It's a strange thing. I don't like to use all that stuff over the years, the Vikings have not done this or not done that. It's not like there's some rule against the Vikings winning in these conditions, for crying out loud. You can't. One team doesn't have anything to do with the other. But my goodness, I guess if the players are the same and they keep doing the same thing, you have to agree that, man, there's a problem there.
All right, we'll talk about the Cowboys game to end the show, but I will run a preview for one of our partner shows called We're Watching Here, which is on the Big Heads
We're Watching Here
Media Network. We're watching here.
Hey everyone, Chris Williams here, inviting you to join me and my co-host Perry Seibert every other Friday for our podcast, We're Watching Here! We're Watching Here! Every other Friday, we talk movies, from our favorite directors to looks back at vintage releases to our thoughts on today's current trends. This is all backed up with the knowledge of 2 guys who've been writing about films for years and talking about them their entire lives. From Spielberg to Soderbergh and Malick to Michael Bay, we are opinionated moviegoers giving you opinionated movie talk. Tune in wherever you get your podcasts from Big Heads Media.
No,
and now,
but
on with the show.
I'm not even close.
I'm gonna have to check that out. I like movies. Again, I have not heard it yet, but I'm gonna have to look for it. So
it's working. My dad's all excited about this Oakland A's podcast that we advertised for last week because he's a big athletics fan.
Are they in the Big Ten? The Oakland A's.
Well, Cousins keeps playing like this. He won't be. I'll find a way. All right, the Cowboys, a team that I hate almost on an unparalleled level, are coming up this weekend. They've had an up and down season. Somehow,
Two wins, 3 losses, 2 wins. Yep.
Yeah, they're it's kind of Vikings-esque in their in the way things have been rolling out, but a lot of off-season pressure or turmoil. That's the word I'm looking for. With Zeke, he fell really far in our fantasy draft because I think a lot of I could have picked him. I think I was 7th, and I didn't because I had Le'Veon Bell last year, and I actually traded for him, and I thought that for sure he'd be back within a couple weeks, and he obviously never came back. And then he came back. But yeah, they're a good team. The Vikings will have their hands full on offense. We talked about the Pro Football Focus mid-season All-Pro team. I think Dak was the honorable mention behind Russell Wilson. They have that really good receiver from Alabama, Amari Cooper, and their defense is good. So, what are your thoughts, Joe?
It's interesting. My animus towards the Cowboys is lessened over the years. I used to detest them as much as the Packers, if not more, for many reasons. And said in my preview that there's
the America's team thing bothered you.
Yes, for quite a long time. And,
me too.
But they've been so dysfunctional, since they had their big Emmitt Smith and Troy Aikman.
The dynasty that we gifted them.
Yes, that's the one. So ever since then, Jerry Jones has proved to be just the worst thing for this team. He might spend plenty of money to get them to where they need to be, but his involvement to me has just been the thing that has held them back, and I just love it every time he's got to have his face on camera, and everybody talks about Jerry Jones because
coming down to the sideline all the time.
Yes, keeps him from. So I don't have the same feelings as I did. They're still there, especially.
It's probably because they haven't been as good.
Exactly, that's exactly right. But they are a good team. But like I said in the podcast or in the preview, they've played worse teams than the Vikings have. They've played. They have played 5 of their games are a total of the 5. 4 wins. 1 for the Dolphins, 1 for the Washington, and 2 for the Giants. Although they played the Giants twice, so I suppose technically it should be 6. But it's but their only solid win is over the Philadelphia Eagles, which is the Vikings' only really quality win as well. So you look at the numbers and they're very good against the pass and the run. They're the tops in the league in as far as total yardage on offense, and they're in the top 5 in scoring. 28 points a game or thereabouts. So they're a formidable opponent. They've got a very good defense, and when they're playing well. But they got this offensive line that's just heralded, but gives plenty of room for Zeke to run. So the Vikings have to play really well to beat them. I think they're beatable. I think you can get to them. I mean, you rattle Dak Prescott, and you can get to him and make him make some bad throws. If they can take away the run and make Dak Prescott try to beat him, it may have a better chance. But Kirk Cousins has to be able to score points down there. And there's also the Dan Bailey revenge game coming up, right?
Ooh. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Maybe he'll kick like 10 field goals for us.
I'd rather have the Vikings score touchdowns, but yeah, that's I've got Dan Bailey going against you just for that, so he can kick a field goal for the Vikings and win it, and kick a field goal for the Vikings and you lose. So
it's strange they played the Saints and lost by 2, 12-10. I don't know what happened in that game. Was that the game that Breeze got injured?
It might have been.
They lost to the Packers by 10. They lost to the Jets by 2. And then they bounced back. This team does actually scare me a little bit just because of their line, seeing the lack of pressure and how that really had a big determining factor on the end of the Chiefs game.
Joe, don't you think if the Vikings had won last Sunday that we'd feel a heck of a lot different about this game coming up this week?
Yes.
I think we would, yeah.
Yeah. Because the idea of losing and going 6-4 is really not good. That's not breaking news or anything, but the NFC is going to be tough. There's a lot of good teams, a lot of which the Vikings are about to play. They have the Seahawks coming up. You have to win these winnable. It sounds so dumb, but you have to win these winnable games. Yep. Because at the end of the season, like we saw last year, not that it would have made a much difference considering how they were playing if they had made the playoffs, but we saw maybe if the Vikings hadn't tied the Packers, they would have we wouldn't have to worry about winning an inning against the Bears to end the season. And when you're gifted these things from the cosmos, like Mahomes not playing, like Trubisky getting injured on the first drive, you have to take advantage of that, because then you're going to run into teams that don't have glaring issues. The Cowboys might not be the Super Bowl champion, but they're pretty well evenly distributed in terms of talent and output. They have the defense, their offense is balanced. There's not any huge sheer weakness like we saw with Mahomes being out. Not that it mattered much. So it is a really good test. It's kind of what we thought maybe the Falcons game was going to be, and that didn't end up happening. But that having been said, what I'm talking about with the Cowboys is strictly on paper, because they've struggled to put the pieces together as well. People were calling for... I feel like my entire adult life, people have been calling for Jason Garrett to be fired. He's been there for so long, and it's just the same thing every year. And I don't know, maybe Jones is less mercurial than he was back in the day. I don't know why.
I think Garrett kissed his ring, and he's always, very complimentary to him in meetings, just like many of the people that still are working with our president. So
I was just going to say, that sounds a little familiar.
Yeah, show him fealty, and he'll keep you around.
That's how I run the sites too. Once a day, everyone has to send me an article about how great I am. There's not a lot of paragraphs in those letters.
Starting to work on mine right now, Joe.
So what time is the game on Sunday?
Sunday night. Sunday night football.
Okay. I thought it was the primetime game. That's a little iffy. What happened to the prediction contest last week? Because I finally went up. I don't honestly think I've ever been up in this contest ever.
You were up by 4 last week. You had your first lead of this season and probably of any of the 3 seasons. So
definitely.
It was, but you've also won. I mean, I won one the second week of the season, and you've been winning ever since then. So I finally got you back. The Vikings lost the game 23-26. You predicted a 34-31 win for the Vikings, which made you 16 off, a total of 16 points off. I predicted a 24-21 win for the Vikings, and mine was only 6 off. So
I grabbed 10-point swing.
10 points, yes. I'm back
down
up
by 6.
That is correct, sir.
Barf.
And you get to go first as a result.
Yeah. This honestly feels very like the hardest season for predictions since we've started doing this a couple years ago.
Oh, you say that because you're doing so well, huh? Okay.
Yeah, it takes a genius to really. It's not about like who's over by what, but how many games you've actually won. But no, yeah, I find it very hard to know what to expect.
Sir, because I want to stay working here, so I agree with what you say. Go ahead.
Did you just make eye contact with me? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'd like to think that they'd bounce back, that Cousins would be really ticked off, and he does, for some reason, seem to play better when that happens. Have you seen the movie I, Tonya?
No.
About Tonya Harding that just came out?
Oh, no, I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, so her mom is awful, like the worst stage mom you can imagine, and she would hire people before big skating competitions to make her daughter really angry, like yell at her from the stands or approach her in the lobby and say really awful things to her, because when she was really mad, she skated better.
Jesus.
And so I wonder if Cousins is that guy. You would think that a guy that seems to have happy feet and what that implies about his ability to handle pressure mental pressure and the pressure from the other team.
We need to get Tanya's mom to start harassing.
That's what I'm saying. I'll give her, a couple bucks because he seems to really play well when he's backed into a corner. And so I'm hoping, I guess, that's what the Chiefs game did. I have to believe that they're going to bounce back and win because otherwise what am I doing here? But I think it'll be a close game with Thielen being out. I'm going to go with a 17-15 Vikings win.
Wow.
I immediately hate it.
Pardon me?
I immediately hate that.
We've got some differences, in points. I'm a little bit higher than that. I see it as a very close game as well. In fact, mine's a 1-point game. I got 24-23 Vikings. We're both such homers. We've picked Vikings every game, both of us all year long.
Remember, though, that one year you were right, like, every single time because the Vikings were good?
Right. And I am such a homer, but we're only 6-3. That's not terrible as far as predicting wins and losses.
Not the end of the world, I heard someone say.
But we'll have more movement this week for how the contest goes, and not necessarily a ball movement. But anyway, go ahead. That was a bad joke. That shit.
It's a thinker. I'm still chewing on it. It's gonna be a very. It'll be fun. So it's actually really, I guess, good timing for us. As I mentioned earlier, there's an app you can download. It's free. It's called Hot Mic, as in microphone, so MIC. When someone says something they're inappropriate because they think their microphone is off. That's called the Hot Mic. And we're going to be the first Vikings team covering Vikings games. It's live game commentary that can sync up to any provider if you have cable or satellite or streaming or just rabbit ears, and you'll see us either on video and audio or both, obviously, covering the team.
3.5 hours of more of my voice. I don't know.
I know. If this podcast didn't sell you on hanging out with us,
Joe, do they have a little nervous. Do they have it for Android yet?
No, but that's thank you for asking that. Right now it's only a iOS or iPhone or Mac app, but they're rolling out with the Android side of it in about 2 weeks, it looks like. So that's when they're going to be doing a lot more advertising, a big push for their global launch of the Android side. But check it out, it's really cool. There's actually a lot of well-known broadcasters that are doing it, especially on the West Coast where they're headquartered. So if you, for example, my dad refuses to listen to Dick Bramer cover the Twins. He can't stand it. And it's been that way my entire life. We've always tried to find a way to sync the radio with the TV, but you can't do that because it just doesn't work that way. And so now you have an option to perhaps replace the coverage with something that might be a little bit more your style. The Vikings sometimes, especially in the preseason, end up getting like Team 5C covering things when it's not PA doing it. And so it's nice to have guys who are local, who are uncensored, and who are actual fans of the team covering it, because you're going to get some actual natural reactions from us. And if you can't tell, I get really tense during games, so get ready for some sweaty pacing.
This is Joe Johnson. Calm down. You want to catch him during the game.
Oof. That, honestly, no joke. I've always been worried about getting a press pass for games, because it's like, how can I do that? How can I sit on my hands and not break drywall or something?
The Vikings are concerned about that too.
I don't blame them. So stay tuned to the site this week. Both sites, Purple PTSD, Vikings Territory, will have a lot of information about that. It would be really cool if you guys could tune in, because we're really excited about it, and it's going to be a really fun opportunity. But other than that, just stay tuned to the sites for all of our coverage of all things Vikings. But this has been Morning Joe's for the 6th of November. We will catch you guys starting Tuesday next week, and we'll be doing Tuesdays from that point forward. So if you want to listen live, you'll know that there's a more standard day and time, Tuesdays at 9:30 in the morning. Skol.